Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Sitematch365, brought to you today by Stantec. It's an honour to be presenting our fourth event, and for the focus today to be on Croydon, a borough that's close to my heart, as well as to my front door. My name's Toby Fox. I'm the Managing Director at 3Fox, the marketing agency for councils. And since lockdown began, we've been providing 2 digital channels to help keep our network of councils, developers, investors and their advisors connected. The first channel, The Voice of Authority, is back tomorrow when we'll be presenting the third and final session with a fantastic example of council collaboration that is the Hertfordshire Growth Board. This time we're going to be looking at what the role of the HGB is in supporting development and delivery during Hertfordshire's recovery. And you can book yourself onto that event now and watch all the videos from all of our previous sessions at www.thevoiceofauthority.co.uk. Our second channel is Sitematch365. Many of you will have attended Sitematch London, an event that took place annually since 2012 and hosted around 50 public sector landowners every year. Each of those organisations spent the day hosting 15-minute meetings with developers and investors and influencers. And the event had some great outcomes in terms of relationships started and nurtured to the point of investment and delivery in dozens of boroughs. But the one overwhelming disadvantage of that model is that if a council or a developer isn't available on that single day, they miss out. So while lockdown has meant that we can't all meet together in one room, it has provided an opportunity. And that's an opportunity for councils to select a day when they can be available and to provide a free-to-view briefing on their opportunities and what developers can expect when doing business with them, and to host some 15-minute meetings, one-to-one online. Any developers or investors who can't make this session can access a video of the briefing anytime at www.sitematch365.com and arrange a meeting during a second follow-up slot set by the council. The first time we did this for Ealing a few weeks ago, the briefing was watched by about 145 people and a further 50 to 60 viewed it within a week of it going online. And we arranged in that sort of fortnight 16 one-to-one meetings with developers. So our hope is that this new Sitematch365 platform will make it easier for the development community to play its part in getting the UK economy back on the road to recovery. And we look forward to working with you all with that aim. And I'm looking forward to spending the next 45 minutes or so in the excellent company of our Croydon panel today. It's a pleasure to introduce to you Cllr Paul Scott, who is Cabinet Member for Environment, Transport and Regeneration at Croydon Council, and Heather Cheesbrough, who's Director of Planning and Strategic Transport, and Stephen Tate, who is Director of Growth, Employment and Regeneration. Now, I can't imagine there's anyone out there in Zoomland who hasn't been aware of the changes and upheavals and challenges facing Croydon Council over the last few weeks. And I'm a news hound at heart, so it's very exciting for me to be able to provide you viewers with the first opportunity to hear from some of the key decision makers at the council discussing where they are and what they're doing and how they intend to progress. And knowing what an appetite for information you're likely to have, our panelists have very kindly agreed to stay on for an additional 15 minutes to take some questions from you at the end of this session. So keep those coming in through the Q&A throughout the session and we'll turn to them in about 45 minutes. And of course, one of the great benefits of our format is that if you hear anything today that encourages you to take up a conversation with the council about any of the opportunities that they're going to unveil, you can email my colleague, Agnes, and book a meeting in for next week. What a fantastic format. Now, panel, it may be a fantastic format, but you've got a vital role to play. Your job today is to stoke the enthusiasm of our viewers and to excite them into taking up that offer to meet your team when the meetings are available next week. So to do that, there's no one I'd rather turn to first than Cllr Paul Scott, who, to Croydon's great advantage, can boast 24 years as an architect and a real understanding of the development business and the placemaking aspects of it. So, Councillor, could you give us an overview of the borough as a location for investment and development?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's a place of real opportunity. I mean, we're really well placed in terms of the geography of the area, excellent public transport links, good once they get going again, good links down to Gatwick, for example, excellent train links. So we're very well connected. We have, as part of our town centre, which is really, to be honest, a city centre. If it wasn't for the sort of slightly quirky way that we decide what places would be a town, what places would be a city, we would definitely be a city. And we are essentially the biggest town in the whole of Europe. And I think if we were a city, we'd be in the sort of almost the top 10 in the UK. So, but it's a place of change. We have seen lots of changes in the past in Croydon town centre, particularly after the war, that weren't particularly successful, really, particularly the way we look at things at the moment, which has created a great level of opportunity for redevelopment in that city centre and the metropolitan centre area. But also, we're a big borough, so we've got lots of other places as well. And essentially, so there's 15 sort of smaller towns, district centres and areas around the borough that offer a whole range of different opportunities as well. And many of those have got excellent, transport links, etc. as well. We also have the Purley Way, which we are looking at very closely at the moment as a further sort of transformation area, which offers, at the moment, it's largely retail shed and industrial shed. And we have commissioned, working with the GLA, an important piece of work there that will be reflected in our local plan, which we are reviewing at the moment, to look at that as a mixed use development area, introducing possibly up to about 10,000, possibly more homes, mixed use, so we have the employment uses as well, but also transforming the rather negative environment that we have there at the moment, which is overly car focused. So it's a real sort of huge opportunity if you want to build a big office building, which maybe people are questioning at the moment whether you'd want to do that, but we've got the right sort of opportunities here. If your thing is residential or mixed use, we've got those opportunities as well. Build to rent, we've just had, it's just finishing off at the moment, the tallest prefabricated building in the world is nearing completion in Croydon. So we're very much a sort of a forward-looking, pro-development borough.
In pushing that agenda forward, Councillor, what are the challenges you're facing, particularly given the pandemic, in executing the recovery strand at the moment?
Well, I think probably the issue that everybody faces at the moment is not knowing really what the impact of the pandemic is going to be, either financially, in terms of working environments. I was on a call earlier on with some of my colleagues, and that's slightly more than 24 years, sadly, as an architect now, about the reopening of our office in central London and how that's going to be used. I think the key thing that everybody that's sort of really started to look at this is aware of is nobody knows what is going to happen. Are people going to remain working at home where they can for all of the time, most of the time? Are our offices going to become meeting hubs? I suspect that's probably the case, but we don't know. What's going to happen with retail? Retail has been really suffering over recent years, or particularly the sort of large-scale retail. How is that going to change? Is the housing market going to stay as buoyant as it is at the moment with a sort of the post-lockdown jump? What kind of homes are people going to want? We've seen a lot of apartments being built. Will we see a switch back to houses as being more popular where that is affordable? Of course, is a sort of key sort of issue. So I think the thing at the moment really is flexibility. And I think it's going to be the future for virtually everything that we need, that we're building, where we're converting. How can developments evolve over time? And I think that's going to be a really important aspect. We need to capture that in our planning policies. And as I say, we are at the moment reviewing our local plan, so it's a good opportunity for that, to make sure that places can change and adapt. I think irrespective of what's happened with the pandemic and what indeed going forward happens with the pandemic, this sort of thing would have happened anyway. This need to have a greater level of flexibility. So our town centres can grow and evolve and change quickly to meet a very, very quickly changing world.
I hear what you're saying about it being difficult to understand what the market wants and where the market is going at the moment. But perhaps you could help viewers by defining what it is that you're looking for. What's on your wish list for Croydon in terms of development, either in the broadest kind of macro terms or the specifics of what you'd like to see built here?
Well, we want to see an active, vibrant, successful metropolitan centre that has a wide range of activities in it, that isn't just in an old style sort of planning terms or zoned as being retail, and then there's another area where there are some offices, and outside of that there are places where people live. We want to see a vibrant, true, traditional almost in many senses, town or city centre, which is vibrant throughout the whole of the day. You can live, work and play there. You can come in as a visitor and enjoy a whole range of different activities, whether it's going to the museum, a bit of retail therapy, and it may well be the more touch and feel type retail rather than necessarily buying it there and then. Sort of showrooms, coming out for dinner, coming out for the evening, for the kids to play in one of the transformational new open spaces or old open spaces that we're radically changing at the moment. A whole sort of variety of things happening. But equally, we also want to see a similar sort of thing in our local centres as well, which are, and I'm not talking about a shopping parade and a pub here. We have some very big local centres, places like Purley, Coulsdon, Thornton Heath, South Norwood, and others. They've actually seen something of an uplift in terms of people, being more local and be active more local. We want to see that continue as well. So I think there are real opportunities in those locations for that greater variety, and people not spending an hour and a half travelling somewhere else to work, to play, whatever, but actually be more local. We have a population in the immediate borough of about 400,000. I don't know how many millions it is within a sort of a relatively local area. We want to see that a lot more of those people staying local, building up their communities and having opportunities in the local area, which is better for the environment, better for people, and better for places.
I'm a victim of Croydon propaganda, so I should point out that it doesn't take an hour and a half to travel anywhere from Croydon. It takes 16 minutes to get to almost all important destinations, right?
Absolutely. It's about 16 minutes into, no, absolutely, good point. 16 minutes into Victoria, about, depending on which of the many stations you're travelling from, 14, in fact, from Norwood Junction, 11 minutes into London Bridge. And sort of similar sort of timescales down to Gatwick as well. So if you want to get down to the sea, that's pretty close as well, down in Brighton.
So in terms of delivering that wish list, what kind of partners are you looking for to work with? What sort of values are you looking to share with companies that might come in and help you deliver your vision for the Thornton Heaths and the Coulsdons and the Croydon metropolitan town centres?
Well, a word we often use in Croydon is ambition, and I'd like to be working with partners who have a real positive ambition for the place, who want to deliver great buildings set in great environments that work well in the wider settings in which they are located. Places that if there's a ribbon to be cut when they're opened, that everybody wanting to be there at that ribbon cutting event, so we can be proud of. People have developers that have a social conscience as well as part of that. We need affordable homes. We can't have it. We don't want a borough that is exclusively for people who can only afford a certain price level. For our societies to work well, for places to work well, we need to provide homes that are affordable for all. So, so developers that have got that kind of understanding that is a key part of bringing forward development, if it's residential development in the area. I think also, picking up on the point I was saying earlier on, developers that understand the need that we need to build more flexibly. Also, developers that understand the need to be more sustainable. Frankly, if we, irrespective of the current environment that we're in at the moment with the pandemic, if we don't deal with the environmental disaster we as a world face, then frankly, anything we do is pretty pointless almost. You know, we've got to get to grips with that. So an understanding and a aspiration and ambition to create sustainable developments. And that also means for those who already own property in Croydon, which is already developed, looking very carefully at reusing existing structures. And I think we're going to see with Westfield's CLP development coming forward at the Whitgift Centre, hopefully a lot more reuse of that site, rather than the whole area being cleared, everything going, a lot of embedded carbon in a lot of concrete, just going to landfill somewhere, or creating a very deep piling mat. We want to see buildings being reused where that is a sensible approach.
Yeah, you mentioned the Whitgift, and we'll pick up again on that later. But you've just caused a memory to spring out in my head from about, it must have been 10 or 12 years ago, sitting around a table at DP9 in central London with the then director of regeneration and a number of developers invested in Croydon, talking about the borough's future. And someone mentioned that they wanted to bring forward a scheme that was 100% car free, and they were laughed out of the room. I think things have changed.
Oh yes. No, very, very, very much so. We've got, as I say, great public transport accessibility. We are developing the sort of walking and cycling routes as well, which is also really, really important. So, frankly, with the sort of rise of car clubs and the need, the drive and the need to be more sustainable, yes, in the right places, car-free or very low car provision, typically only for people who have got disabilities, is something that we very strongly support, particularly in the metropolitan centre, but also in quite a few of the local centres as well. We are often having a challenging debates with residents in the suburban areas as well. We've got a lot of capacity and need for homes across the borough. So a lot of the development that's happening in Croydon is also smaller scale, what the government now call gentle densification. We hope at some stage they'll actually give us a definition of what they actually mean by that, which would be rather useful, but we shall see. So they're about parking provision in those sorts of locations, making sure that we get the right sort of balance. But we don't want that. Much of what was built in Croydon in the 60s was totally focused around the car and building urban motorways, and those don't work. They were never finished, which doesn't help either in many respects, although it's an advantage because sort of scaling down the reliance on the motor car does help when a certain area gets snarled up because there's just too much traffic at the moment. But yeah, I think we can now take the opportunity to restructure our metropolitan centres to get away from this thinking that everything has to be connected by a car. And you mentioned one of the things talking to Westfield is getting them to reduce the amount of parking provision they felt they needed in the Croydon Westfield, or whatever they're going to call it, where you had the frankly crazy sort of scenario of proposals to build car parking spaces that would then only be used for about 6 days of the year, just before Christmas. And those kind of things are just ridiculous. So we need to move on and think about things in a much more sustainable manner.
Yeah, we've got different glasses on now, haven't we? You mentioned the transformation of green spaces in Croydon. Can you give us a little bit of information on that?
Yes, well, we've got a number of big sort of public realm schemes coming forward. Mm-hmm. So there's Fairfield, as we're now calling what had become known as College Green. It's next to Fairfield Halls, which has recently been very, very fundamentally sort of refurbished and restored to its former grandeur. And that will be a real sort of mixed sort of area, cultural area, all sorts of opportunities. The way I sort of describe it is a bit like South Bank, but in Croydon. It's the way we want to see that sort of developing. Just across the road, you've got Queen's Gardens, which is just being hoarded off at the moment. That's being totally transformed as a much more sort of family-friendly urban park as part of the development of the old Taberner House scheme, which is now being replaced by 550 13, I think it is, homes in 4 blocks. They're very well progressed now. And we've also got Queen Square as part of the, we're hoping to get a planning application through from R&F to create, again, what I sort of describe as being almost like the sort of Covent Garden sort of area of Croydon. So again, residential-led scheme being proposed there, some circa 900 homes, but with a ground level that's very much focused on social activities, employment activities. They're going to be including, hopefully, quite a few sort of maker and seller type spaces to give that kind of feel around a new public square that will be, on one side we'll have the town hall, our rather grand Victorian town hall on one side of it. So
fantastic.
And then there's a whole series of other spaces. I mean, they're just 3 that are very, very close together, but linking out into the parks. One of the great things about Croydon is you can be in central Croydon in about 5 minutes. You can be in a fabulous park.
Yeah.
So it's
not just a fabulous park. You can be in Covent Garden or the South Bank by the sounds of it any day now. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor, for painting such a fantastic and vivid picture. And Councillor Scott has kindly agreed to stay on at the end of this session for 10-15 minutes to answer any questions. So keep them coming. And I noticed that when he mentioned the word car parking, our first question popped up in the Q&A, but it's not about car parking. It's about one of the elephants in the room. And I'm going to turn now to Heather to tame some of these elephants. And notwithstanding the enthusiasm and energy and compelling content of Councillor Scott's messages, there are some elephants in our Zoom room when we're talking about development in Croydon. And the first one, I guess I'll put it like this: Croydon's known as a council that is well resourced to support development. How are you responding to the widely reported financial challenges facing the council?
Thank you, Toby. Good afternoon, everyone. Well, development and inward investment is still incredibly, if not vitally important to the borough. And I'd say now even more so than perhaps it has been in the past, and we know it's been like a #1 consideration. And the reason I say that is because when we're in an environment with less public funds, we have to look to private sector partners. And that's not to say that at Croydon we haven't put serious funding in to development and bringing regeneration forward. We have pump primed investment in Croydon in terms of providing, schools, new leisure centres, much better enhanced public realm. So we've put significant funding in over the past 10-15 years to make Croydon the sort of destination that it is now, that developers I think do want to invest in. And so I would say to private developers out there, we've put serious investment and resources into the town centre and to the wider borough, and we're looking for you to step up to the plate more now. I know that we do work in partnership with developers, and that the developers that we see there on site building out at the moment, we do work together, so they do provide significant mitigation to their developments. And that's what we need to continue to do so. And that includes affordable housing, because I think some of the sort of murmurings that I've heard is, we can't kind of deliver this sort of quantum of affordable housing, etc. But it's still, as Councillor Scott said, a really #1 consideration. And that's how we need to continue to deliver those homes for those people who won't be able to provide market rates. And whilst we obviously are somewhat financially constrained, that's not to say that we're still not putting funding into the town centre and to our borough. We've still got our growth zone that Stephen can talk more about. And that growth zone is about putting in place the necessary infrastructure for the development that is coming forward. We will still have SIL funds from the Community Infrastructure Levy to help deliver infrastructure as well. So there is funding going in there. And then on the day-to-day level, in terms of, for instance, my planning team, developers who we've worked with in the past will know that we provide an extremely good value and focused pre-application service and PPAs. and we do provide really top quality advice. And I can say that because I speak to developers and they will say to me, you know, that has been really excellent help. Thank you so much for working through getting, you know, some quite significant consents on site, because we do roll our sleeves up and provide some tough but realistic advice, I'd like to think, and we do negotiate with the GLA and the TfL to get the right package of support. So yes, developers will have to put their hand in the pocket to pay for these, but frankly the amount of money, we're talking small change in terms of the overall cost of the development, and the certainty that that provides, I would have thought is you know, huge value for developers out there. So yes, we need some private sector to step up to the plate a bit more, but we're still going to help in every single way we can to make development happen.
And you've got a really good reputation. Your team's got a really good reputation, very well thought of by the market, as you said. That's echoed by the private sector. Are you going to be able to maintain that team, maintain that strength of performance, Ella?
I hope so. I think it's absolutely vital, frankly, because, I mean, it is a statutory service, but we know throughout the UK that if you just rely on statutory service and that the funds that come in through planning applications itself, the actual fee, it's not enough to provide the really important time and effort to get development on site. And I know that there's developers, I see Darren Nathan is watching now, he will know how much additional effort we put in to make sure that consent ended up getting on site, because we all know, you know, Section 106, the community, land assembly, all those tricky things that we do as a council really make the difference between development happening and not happening. And as Councillor Scott set out, we are a very pro-development borough, but pro-development, you know, being pro-development means actually rolling your sleeves up and doing, using all the levers you've got, using your influence, using your reputation, using your contacts, and using the powers you've got to make development happen, because it's not straightforward. And I suppose this is me having a bit of a knock at the government, always having a go at the planners. Oh, this is why stuff doesn't get built. No, actually, there's a lot more other influences on the system, just the planning system. But I do know in Croydon, as a planning department, we deliver.
Fantastic. So let's talk a bit about what you're delivering and what you can talk about that's new. What's the latest position on East Croydon Station? It's the borough's biggest regen opportunity. It's high profile. Anyone travelling on that line sees that site on a regular basis. And of course, it's been under development for a long time, but we're finally seeing things come through. So what's the latest on that?
Yeah, East Croydon is just really, really exciting. We've spent the last year working on a strategic regeneration framework, and this just demonstrates, you know, what does the council do to bring forward development. We funded that strategic regeneration framework to ensure that we get a really holistic approach to how regeneration around East Croydon can really be beneficial, and how can we get the best bang for our buck, and how can we make sure that East Croydon really optimises the investment that Network Rail and hopefully DfT will be putting into it, so that it's really positive for Croydon and all Croydon's residents and businesses. So we've put together the SRF, and we've been working with the DfT and TfL and Network Rail on the proposals, because they want to bring forward a Transport and Works Act order to bring forward the improvements. And we have had some tough conversations, I mean, really tough over the past year. And I think we are in a much better position now than perhaps we were. And effectively, what the conversations have been around is about what the council sees as important and what perhaps Network Rail will see as important. You know, we as a council have always welcomed the railway improvements. And these are things like, you know, getting the infrastructure right. These are about putting in new dive unders and flyovers at Selhurst Junction and a new Windmill Bridge and sorting out the bottleneck. But that's really, really important. But what's important for the council as well is the placemaking aspect of it. What happens at East Croydon Station, how it looks and feels for the public and for the users of it. How does it work in terms of it being not just a railway station, but as a multimodal transport hub? And that's been absolutely fundamental to where we've been coming from. And the the public realm around it, the routes in, the accessibility, the legibility, that is all absolutely fundamental, which isn't always number one consideration for Network Rail. However, so we've had those tough conversations and we continue to do so, and we are working in, I think, really much better partnership than we have been in the past. And what I'm pleased about also is that there's been so much uncertainty with the use of public transport over the past few months with COVID, etc., is that Network Rail have remained committed, and DfT remained committed to East Croydon improvements. And I'm really pleased that we granted a recent consent for the Stanhope Schroeder site, for the new government building there. And that there is, strong appetite with Stanhope Schroeder to complete the sort of build out around there. And I think that's partly because the immediate environments around East Croydon Station do look so positive. So we'll continue to work with Network Rail and TfL and DfT to bring it forward, but there's some more stuff to come out on it. And as Councillor Scott said, he trailed in the fact that we're doing a new local plan. There's a whole new chapter around East Croydon Station. We'll set out our aspiration and ambition there. So stakeholders and developers will be able to see very clearly what we're looking for, and hopefully feel that there's an opportunity that they would like to take up and be part of too.
What's the timing of the local plan?
Local plan, we hope to go out to pre-submission consultation autumn of this year. We're hoping to, and we're looking to get it adopted February 2022.
Right. Okay. And you feel that that'll unlock more opportunities for development and improvement around that area?
Yes, because it provides certainty. There is being proposed a huge amount of change. We will set out in policy and site allocations what we want to see as a council. And there will also be the strategic regeneration framework behind it in terms of the more detailed thinking about the specifics of like master planning around the station. What are the key routes in? What sort of public realm we want to see, and some further thinking around height, scale, and massing of buildings. Because I think we did do the East Croydon master plan from 2009, and it was done a bit of a wing and a prayer because the redevelopment of East Croydon Station seems such a fantastical thing to take place. Now we're in a much better position, and I think we've really looked hard at the sorts of densities and heights that we would like to see around the station, and I think there's a lot of opportunity for developers there. Yeah,
great stuff. Well, East Croydon is no longer an elephant in the room, is it? It was for years, but thanks to your own efforts and Stanhope and Schroeder's and Box Park, it's become a really exciting zone of activity. But there is another elephant, and it's the Whitgift. Is anything ever going to happen with the Whitgift, Heather?
Whitgift, well, I think it's a really interesting time for retail, and we've got to recognise that. Retail and the sector has struggled for some time, and COVID basically has accelerated the sort of changes in retail. Shopping behaviour, there's been a rise of online, and I mean effectively the sheer quantum of retail that was out there was not sustainable, and I think that a lot of retailers frankly did not help themselves. And I've said this before, you had a lot of quite bland, ubiquitous offer. You had some frankly shocking customer service going on, I think, in some stores, and you could say that a lot of the woes of retail have, fallen on retail because they've not really helped themselves. However, there is some really strong independent stores out there, and there's some real exciting innovation, and that's what we've been looking at in terms of what next. And we've been working very much with our partners, CLP, on this. It's been known that they are reviewing the proposals, and we've been working with them on reviewing those proposals. And as Councillor Scott said, it's a very difficult time in terms of certainty to actually, plump on any particular thing. Well, definite that's going to happen. And we're looking for flexibility, and I think that we're looking at sort of potentially more organic, more piloting of different uses. We're looking at meanwhile uses. But one thing that I would emphasise is that CLP have said they very much are committed to Croydon. I think because of all the reasons that Councillor Scott set out, Croydon is a really strong location. It's still a destination of choice. and you need to have a decent town centre. And because of the quantum of development that's been taking place in and around the town centre over the past 10 years, the town centre, change will happen there in the retail core. There is definitely a surrounding market that will help drive that, and so I think things will happen, and that is something that Croydon Limited Partnership, CLP, have been reiterating to us. It's just making sure that they get the right mix of uses and the right quantums of development. So we continue to work together. Something will happen, I'm quite convinced on that, and we will continue to work to make sure that we've got some meanwhile uses and activities in the town centre very soon that will help keep that momentum and start to turn around the decline in the town centre as well.
What can you say about when something might happen beyond the meanwhile uses?
I can't say anything at this point in time. That's what the conversation is we're having with CLP at the moment. But I can only emphasise again, they are keen to get on and do something.
Great stuff, Heather. Thank you. And let's turn to Purley Way, another of the sort of great potentials of Croydon, and another of those aspects that have been really accelerated by COVID-19. You've got a sort of box retail area that is really fairly redundant, I guess, in many senses at the moment, and that kind of traditional retail decline, and at the same time the upsurge in demand for logistics and light industrial space as well I would have thought make Purley Way really quite an exciting hotspot. What have you got planned for that?
Well, it certainly is an exciting hotspot, yes. We're doing the master plan that's been funded by the GLA, which is going to inform a new chapter, another new chapter in our local plan. So it's quite a major change in our local plan, about how can we proactively shape Purley Way and capture the changes that are happening in the retail market and also in logistics and in commercial and industrial. We've been working very closely with the Purley Way Forum, which is coming together a number of key stakeholders and landowners and investors there. And there's a lot of interest and development activity happening there. And what I'm really pleased to see is it's not just wanting to put residential in at all. It is about putting in more commercial space. What we're trying to achieve in the master plan is to explore how can we make the area more mixed use. We don't want to lose the commercialness of it, but how can we introduce more mixed use development in a form that doesn't impact negatively on the amenity of either mixed uses or the existing protected sills, as the industrial site, the industrial allocations as well. So we are looking for some housing. What I will say though is we don't need to fill it up with housing to meet our housing targets at all. So we're looking as a housing to bring some forward as an interesting component in place shaping, because as Councillor Scott said, it's not a particularly attractive place. Let's not beat around the bush. And the place shaping aspects is really important, and we need to work on that, and we need to increase the housing to help us to do that. So I see it as gradually evolving over time. There's a definite interest there in sort of commercial logistic uses, and also there's a lot of interest in the sort of circa 10,000 square foot light manufacturing unit uses as well. So we will continue to work with landowners and stakeholders there, and we will put together the new chapter, which will be out to consultation, and then the master plan as well, which will provide further guidance for developers and landowners. And we will continue to engage with the Purley Way Forum, and I think that's really important partnership about how the market is seeing and working, and how we as a planning authority can work together collaboratively to encourage certain sectors and really important commercial development, but also to make sure we deliver the place shaping elements that we really need to do as well.
Brilliant. Well, we've got some, one of the polls we've just been running has indicated there are industrial developers out there, there are mixed use developers out there watching. So hopefully you've whetted their appetites, Heather, and they'll be contacting Agnes and setting up meetings with your team as we speak. But speaking of placemaking, as you were just then, let's turn to Stephen Tate. And Stephen, what can you tell us about London South Bank University? Because is that a real game changer for Croydon, them coming to the borough?
Hello, Toby. Hello, everyone. I think the simple answer is absolutely yes. LSBU have huge ambitions for Croydon. They're bringing really good quality higher education offered to residents. We've been working really hard to bring a higher education establishment to the borough for a number of years. And of course, we can't forget within the mix, we've always had Croydon College, who've done the accredited courses for a while. But this, for Croydon, I think, is a real game changer and takes it up a notch. And it's not just about the benefits and the opportunities for our residents to continue their learning journey, which is hugely important in its own right, but it's also about the ecosystem that it starts to bring around that. So importantly, the attraction of other businesses who've been maybe involved in tech and knowledge transfer that tend to cluster around universities, which provide jobs and opportunities to residents, which continue to positively grow our economy. It's also the fact that we're expecting to bring approximately 500 students in the first year of uptake, going to about 1,200 in the third year, all of whom support the economy of Croydon, the evening and nighttime economy. And the bit that Councillor Scott outlined at the beginning, the strategic location that Croydon has, and as you rightfully pointed out, is not a very long journey between Croydon, central London, Croydon and the growth corridors to the south, Croydon and the airports. Those sort of advantages that we have for our business also is an advantage for LSBU, and for the opportunity for them to continue to grow, but also for their reach to bring additional students in. And since the announcement that we've had from LSBU early in the summer, we've really started to see an uptick, I would say, in interest from business and other parties. So this is really positive. I think it's a real catalyst for us, and I would say watch this space.
How does the sort of pandemic affect that Stephen? Because you sort of imagine 6 months ago it all looked really brilliant and easy peasy. But does the pandemic really change that picture much at all, or are you just as excited about that influx of students and the vibrancy that brings?
So you're right, the pandemic is going to change that. It's changed everything, hasn't it? And it's changed our way that we deliver education. And so, in the next academic year, a lot of activities that would have happened face-to-face, Freshers Week, et cetera, are happening a little bit more virtually. But the exciting piece around that is that we're starting to get a real mixed educational offer. It's a real mix between the online and the face-to-face piece. You're always going to need face-to-face interaction when you come to education. It just doesn't work if you do it 100% online, in the same way as trying to work 100% from home, or as living at work, as I think it's almost called, rather than working from home. It's just not going to work. So I think that there's a change. We need to see how that pans out, but it is still really exciting. We will still get that influx of students, and I think that this is the nub. And what we will see from here is the expansion and other courses being offered.
And what about, there's another sort of feature of Croydon, that particular to Croydon at the moment I wanted to draw out, and that's the growth zone. What can you tell us about the Croydon growth zone, which was mentioned earlier, and the opportunity that creates?
So the growth zone, I think, is a real key part of our regeneration story, and it's been delivering successfully for a number of years. And it really plays into your earlier question to Heather about finances. And it is our continued commitment to investing within the town centre to make sure we support that growth. The growth zone was established in 2015. It's a 16-year programme focused primarily on the town centre, but it goes out into the wider borough through key growth corridors. It's a multi-million-pound programme delivering key infrastructure ahead of development. So, for example, the transport, public realm, digital infrastructure. And it's a scheme funded through the retention of the growth of business rates over that period of time. So it's a tax incremental finance model. So as we get to the growth, we have more money, which we can then invest back into the centre. The key thing about the growth zone being a multi-year programme, being a programme that delivers over 16 years, is it's flexible. It can shrink and it can grow depending upon its requirements. The programs we've got set out at the moment were the programs we originally envisaged. We will change those, we will develop those depending upon the requirements that we need. And it's already seen as, as having quite a positive impact in the area and delivering some of our ambitious aspirations. And in the last year has won a number of awards, from construction logistics, utility coordination to meanwhile. So for example, in the construction logistics field, the programme successfully managed a significant increase in construction traffic in the town centre whilst allowing residents, businesses, visitors to undertake their normal business. The cultural programmes, for example, within it, attracted over 22,000 people to Wandle Park over a single weekend, brought families to play in a sandy beach on the high street, supported the Ends Festival, and built on these achievements, has put the foundations in place for a successful bid to the GLA for the 2023 Borough of Culture. So it's quite a lot of successes that it's brought. And those opportunities, really, I mean, it's a statement of confidence, isn't it, in the potential of our town centre. It provides the framework for sustainable development, and that sustainable development outlined by Councillor Scott and by Heather, and continues to build, I think, Croydon's reputation that we are serious about growth and inward investment.
Are you as serious about growth and inward investment outside of that town centre? So we've spoken a bit about Thornton Heath and other centres around Croydon, but for my sins, I'm a cyclist, and I cycle through Farthing Down, the jewel in Croydon's crown, as far as I'm concerned. This amazing, beautiful valley. I believe the valley on the side of it is actually called Happy Valley. It's almost made up. You couldn't create something like this in fiction. But that Coulsdon town centre, is that a serious locus for investment? What are your plans for the other town centres, and what roles do they play?
Yeah, I mean, you rightfully pointed out Happy Valley. I mean, that is an absolute gem, and something that people don't realise is within Croydon. It is absolutely fantastic location.
I'm nervous about telling them, Stephen. I'd almost rather they didn't know.
It is an absolutely beautiful location, and I would encourage people to go and visit carefully within that. But you're right. I mean, the town centre for a long time has been the real focus, hasn't it, for development, because of all the opportunities that we have there. But our district centres, our local town centres, our neighbourhoods present real opportunities as well. And I think with any regeneration or development pipeline, it takes a little bit of time for these things to come out of the mix and develop. And you're starting to see that over the last couple of years in places like Purley, for example. And we do have some really diverse, exciting neighbourhoods throughout Croydon, which all have present positive opportunities. So great places to live. Great job opportunities, fantastic leisure and culture opportunities, each having a real distinct characteristic, really. And I think importantly, district centres have always been really, really important for our residents. Not more so over the recent lockdown, where residents were using our town centres for the shopping and for the recreation. And importantly, we shouldn't underestimate the impact of any potential spikes that we might have over the next couple of months, and how that might start to play out. And I think the key bit in here is, and Councillor Scott alluded to this, we haven't got a crystal ball. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. We know that there's a whole range of behaviour change that has started to come out as a result of COVID. I think if I was a betting person, I would say we won't all be working 100% from home at the end of this, nor do I think we were going to flip back into where we were in 2020. And so what we need to really do is think very carefully then about the flexible opportunities that we have within our town centres, and think about how we can bring out those opportunities. And all of this is really backed up a little bit by the GLA, for example, our colleagues at the GLA who are talking about the 15-minute city. So the concept that everyone is able to make most of their needs in a simple cycle ride or walk from where they live. And also, the things that we've been doing as a borough to try and support some of those opportunities. So, for example, initiatives like our regeneration framework in Purley and Thornton Heath, our good growth work, Creative Enterprise Fund, Music City, and the works that we've been doing to really try and strengthen and transform our high street. And I think that's the important thing, is the transformation piece. So we get good quality retail, work, leisure and cultural spaces that help to bring forward these opportunities. And of course, I think, and Heather's alluded to this, we are going to be looking towards those town centres at district centres to provide new housing supported by the right social infrastructure around key transport hubs. And I think the key bit out of all of this, and I certainly would welcome these conversations, I know that Heather will as well, discussions with interested parties to if they want to understand our plans and help develop those opportunities further.
How are you going? You mentioned housing. You've got really ambitious housing targets, haven't you? How are you going to deliver those sustainably?
So again, I'm going to repeat exactly what Councillor Scott has said and what Heather has said. We are a council that is genuinely open for growth. We understand within that context that there needs to be some sort of commercial viability, and we're open for those discussions, recognising that council also has its objectives, including affordable housing and sustainability. And the key bit, I think, for us within that is this isn't about growth at any cost. This is about growth that benefits our existing residents, and it must benefit Croydon as a whole. We're not developing new areas ready for residents to move into. We're developing areas that existing residents can benefit from. So in terms of what can landowners and developers expect from us to an extent, they can expect for the open and honest conversation. We have, as I said, we're pro-growth. We have an award-winning planning team with great reputation. We have a proactive regeneration and economic development team looking to develop opportunities with a real focus on inward investment.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed, Stephen. Now I'm going to use what time we have left, because I've been slightly indulgent around asking additional questions and imposing on our panelists' time on behalf of the viewers. But let's turn it over to the viewers themselves now. Danny Kay is asking a question I think is probably best directed at Heather. And I know, sorry, I beg your pardon for interrupting this. I know Stephen has to shoot off to another meeting. So Stephen, at any point, feel free to wave goodbye and disappear. But Heather and Councillor Scott have kindly agreed to stay on for a bit. We've got a question from Danny Kay. If the government succeeds in bringing in the currently proposed interim planning measures, and we could probably talk all day about that, how will you deal with the prospective increase in the threshold for when affordable housing kicks in? Heather.
I thought you might ask me that one. I think, well, the wider issue is about how poor, and this is to do with the planning white paper, how poor the proposals are in it, how ill thought through, how they demonstrate that the authors of it really don't understand planning, because I cannot see anybody who does understand planning writing such a concocted mess of conflicting straightforward garbage, and I'll use that word, garbage it is, which seeks to both centralise powers in planning, take away local authorities' powers, and take away communities' involvement in the planning system. And I think, trying to undermine the delivery of affordable homes, which is for people who cannot afford a market home, is completely wrong. And we need to deliver more of them. So in terms of how we will deal with it, I guess on one hand we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, if these proposals ever do get through, and I don't think they will in the way that they are put forward at the moment. We as a borough have a strong affordable housing policy, and we've worked very closely with the GLA in ensuring that we do deliver affordable homes through development, and I would be really unhappy if anything from the government undermine that, because at the end of the day it comes down to viability, and we negotiate tough with developers. But the bottom line is they're out there developing and building on site with significant quantums of affordable housing, so it's not stopping them. So please, government, do not come up with any crackpot proposals to undermine the delivery of affordable homes, because we talk about the delivery of housing and how much nationally we need to deliver and how much we need to deliver in London. The vast majority of it is affordable homes. It's not private for sale homes that need to be delivered.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Councillor Scott and Stephen, feel free to pick up on that point. But I'm also going to introduce another question from Jennifer Turner. Now, I think Heather's already dealt with this and answered I thought very forcibly. But Councillor Scott, it's always good to have the sort of political view as well as the officer view in terms of inspiring confidence in the market. So in answer to Jennifer's question is, how will the departure of Chief Executive Joe Negrini affect the strategic ambitions of the borough? Will you become less pro-development?
Well, in a word, no. Joe has been very good in terms of driving forward the idea of a pro-development borough, but that wasn't just her idea. You know, that's the administration's view, to a certain extent the previous administration's view. You know, we want to see the changes that that Joe was often talking about. We were often talking to Joe about. And we will be looking for a new chief executive who is equally pro-development, because we see the need for it. It's the demand for it. It's where we need to go. It's the way we intend to continue going.
Fantastic. Thanks, Councillor. So, Stephen, we've got the threshold for affordable housing and the planning white paper. We've got the council's pro-development stance. Feel free to pick up on either of those. But we're also being asked here that Croydon has long been a pro-quality development local authority. What do you think are the biggest challenges that private sector developers could help you tackle? That's from Darren Nathan, who actually Heather mentioned earlier. Darren is watching. In my experience, Heather, Darren is always watching. Glad to know you're there, Darren.
So no doubt Heather will want to pick up a number of these points from a planning perspective. But in terms of what how can developers help us through that process? And I think a lot of this is about the open dialogue that we have with developers. It's about coming up with new ideas. It's about looking at things in a totally different way. It's about helping us push the boundaries, I think, in terms of what we're trying to deliver. And all of that really comes about through having really open and honest dialogue from an early point of view, so we can start understanding exactly how that starts to map out with our communities. And Heather's waving away at me here.
Yeah. Heather,
I just wanted to say, and Stephen's right, is that we have our place review panel, which is a really, really effective bunch of industry experts. And I know that they have provided some really useful advice to not only officers but to developers whose schemes go to them, and that has helped massively, improve and inform schemes and the quality of schemes going forward. And what I'd say to developers is embrace the opportunity that is provided by going to the place review panel. Listen to their expert advice and implement it as well, because they are independent and they do know what they're talking about, and instead of seeing it as an obstacle, but to embrace it at the right time, go early before proposals are set in stone, and take it on board and take it in that sort of spirit, and so that we continue to deliver quality, because it is so important to deliver quality. One of the things about the lockdown is I was cycling around South London in lots of different boroughs looking at the quality of built form, and frankly been quite shocked by a lot of really quite poor development. And I was thinking I would be embarrassed if I was responsible for the planning team who delivered that sort of level of quality of development. Because when you build something, it lasts a long time. So do embrace quality, don't try and shortcut it and to value engineer it out. Have some faith and proudness in what you deliver, because it's a legacy to you as a developer.
And Croydon will support you in that ambition. That's fantastic, Heather. Thank you very much indeed. After that call to arms, I imagine my colleague Agnes is up to her eyeballs now in emails requesting meetings with Croydon to discuss some of these opportunities. If you haven't booked your meeting yet, do email her now on agnes@freefox.co.uk. You never know, your enthusiasm might persuade the council to add even another tranche of meetings to their massively busy schedule. But seriously, thank you, panel, for this really, really helpful opportunity to update the development community on what's happening at the council and how you intend to face your challenges and deliver the improvements and investments that your residents and businesses are hungry for. It's to your tremendous credit, I think, that you've taken the time to address our audience today. And I'll take this opportunity on our viewers' behalf to thank each of you. Cllr Paul Scott, Heather Cheesbrough, and Stephen Tate. Thank you very much indeed. But of course, most of all, thank you to you, the viewers, for taking the time to find out about development opportunities in Croydon. We hope we've whetted your appetite, and we look forward to helping you connect with the council to get conversations started, to stimulate development and help get the economy back on its feet. The recording of this session will be available on www.sitematch365.com shortly. There are some unanswered questions that we didn't have time for. I will be putting those to our panelists by email. They've very kindly agreed to respond to those, and we'll circulate them through their responses through social channels so that we can keep this conversation going. There's just time to remind you that I'll be back tomorrow at 11 AM on the Voice of Authority with the Hertfordshire Growth Board. Visit thevoiceofauthority.co.uk to register. In the meantime, from our Croydon panel, from me and from everyone at 3 Fox, good afternoon.